Hey, I've got a quick question for you. Have you ever walked into a room full of people who love you, full of people you know, people you've been with for years, and then suddenly you feel like a stranger? Feel like a stranger in your own home. You're smiling, you're laughing, you're doing everything right as per usual, but for some reason something feels off. Like you're not really you in that space anymore. It's confusing. Like, and if you're like me, you're probably wondering, am I just being dramatic? Now, am I just in my head again? No, you're not. This video is about that exact feeling and what that feeling really means. Because I don't think it's a problem. I think it's more of a signal. It's a sign that you are growing, a sign that your inner world is starting to shift, but your environment, your external world, just hasn't caught up yet. So if you're feeling disconnected, unsure, like you are outgrowing parts of your life, but you don't quite know what to do about it, you're in the right place. Let's unpack it. So let's identify the feeling. Here's the thing, you're not crazy for feeling off. No. You might be in the same room with the same people, but we can't deny that the way you feel in that room is now very different. You're listening to the same old conversations, you're participating, but for some reason it's like something inside you is slightly removed, slightly disconnected. Almost like you're watching yourself in third person a few feet away. You're there, like not fully there. And you can't begin to quite explain this feeling. Like there's something off. Like you don't fit it anymore. Like maybe your sense of humor changed, maybe you're less reactive, more observant, maybe you're just tired of pretending to care about all these stuff that doesn't really feel aligned to you anymore. Whatever it is, the space doesn't feel like home the way it used to. Okay? So, and what makes it so confusing is the part where no one around you notices. They treat you the same, they expect you to play the same old role, still talk to you like you are the version of yourself that you were a month ago, years ago, or whatever. And part of you feels guilty for not matching that description anymore. Like you're being distant, difficult, or sometimes you come across as cold all of a sudden. But this is what happens, okay, when you are evolving. The space around you just hasn't adjusted to fit that version of you. And that's why it feels weird. That's why you feel out of place. It's not because there's something wrong, but because there is something different and no one can name it. So I'll name it for you, okay? You are in transition. And sometimes transitioning can feel a bit awkward. Not because you're doing it wrong or anything wrong, no, but because you are no longer faking it. So I think it's time that you recognize the change and why it hurts and why it's going to hurt even more. So now, here is what I've realized, okay? A lot of the discomforts we feel in these moments isn't just about people, the people that we're surrounded by. Um, it's about the silent grief of letting go. You know, you're not just changing. You're not just changing anymore. You're quietly outgrowing a version of yourself that once that you once relied on to survive, to belong, and to feel safe in society. That version of you, the agreeable one, the one who knew how to laugh at the right jokes, the one who kept silent for the sake of keeping peace, that version of you helped you function throughout society. Yeah, it helped you function. But now you are starting to want so much more. Okay? You're starting to want more than just functioning as you should. You want alignment. You want raw realness in your life. You want some depth. And the truth is, a lot of people in your life might not be ready for this change. Okay? You yourself might be ready, okay? But the people in your life are not as ready as you are. Not because not because they're bad people, but because they are used to you being predictable. They're used to the old you that shows up on cue whenever, they snap their fingers. And when you stop being the old you, when you stop doing all the usuals that you usually do, even if it's just gently or even subtly, people feel it. They notice these kind of shifts. They might not say it, but the energy between you shifts. And the conversations start to feel thinner, and then you start to feel this weird pressure to snap back into your old self just to avoid rocking the boat. And that pressure, it's heavy, it hurts, it's painful, it's soul crushing because it puts you in an impossible situation. You know? Do I betray myself or do I disappoint others? And usually when we are in this type of situation, we go talk it out with our friends and spill it all out, and two things can happen. You can evolve, or your friends just convince you to go back to being your old self. And when you spend your whole life being the easy one, the low maintenance friend, the chill sibling, even the thought of disappointing people feels wrong, you know? But here's the truth: growth will always disappoint someone who only knew the unhealed version of you, the old version of you. Let that land. Okay? Sit with that for a second. It doesn't mean that you do not love them. It doesn't mean you love them any less. It just means that you are learning to love yourself more. And this isn't conceit, okay? You're not being conceited. You know, because like when that starts to happen, you're going to start noticing certain people in your life, certain dynamics and certain patterns. They start to feel how to soften, too small for you. And I'm not saying this in an arrogant way, I'm being truthful. Imagine you're in a group of friends that just likes to mess around, and suddenly you just want to get serious with your life. And now they just feel betrayed, like, oh, now you think you're too good for us? No, it's just you don't want to operate on that level anymore. And that's the truth. Because you have evolved. A lot of people, people my age or people older like to say, oh, I grew up. you know, I grew out of it. Have you ever heard of something called identity lag? At some point in my life, I came across this idea, identity lag, which is basically when your inner world, your internal world, as in like your beliefs, your awareness, your values, and your whatever evolves. But your external world, as in your relationships, your routines, your habits, and your overall environment, is still a reflection of the older version of you. And this mismatch between your inner world and your outer world creates a friction. Okay, and I don't mean in a loud friction kind of way, not in a chaotic kind of way. It's more of this subtle, ongoing dissonance, like living in a version of your life that no longer fits, but no one else realizes it yet. It's like you're trying to put on your kid clothes, your baby clothes, only to realize that it not only doesn't fit, it's suffocating, it's heavy, it's pressuring, and it's uncomfortable. And you start asking yourself questions like, why does this conversation drain me? You know, this used to be the hottest topic. I used to enjoy this, I used to initiate it. Why do I feel so fake here around all these friends who know me? And I'm, just acting the way I usually do. Why am I the only one? I'm running a fever. Forgive me. As I was saying, you start to ask yourself, these questions, wondering why you're the only one who notices the shifts in the atmosphere. And, when your life doesn't match who you're becoming, two things are, gonna happen. You either, you know, you go you go empty it all out on your friends, you tell them what's going on, and then they will, you know, talk it out with you and revert you back to your old self, you know, or you start quietly pulling away to protect this new version of yourself that is forming, this new little seed that is growing inside of you, this new person. That is identity lag, okay? And it's one of the most emotional emotionally exhausting places to live. But here's the catch, okay? No one claps for this part of your growth, okay? It's not recognition. There's no recognition. There is no external reward. It is not dramatic. It's not even visible. It is 100% internal. You are shedding a part of yourself you've outgrown without the world around you even noticing that you've changed. And that very fact that no one really notices this type of shift, it's very lonely. I know it's very lonely because, like, everyone is going through their own shift, okay? But no one can feel your feelings. It's lonely and that's real. And that's what makes people question if they are even sane. Because everything on the outside looks perfectly fine. Everything is just as usual, but like inside, you're like a mess. You're restless, you're detached, you're out of sync with the life that you used to love and live. You feel like a guest in your own home, in your own story. And this is where most people either go numb and settle, or they wake up and start intentionally rebuilding how they should show up now, rebuilding what they should say yes to and no to now, rebuilding who they allow come close to them, That is what comes next. Let's talk about what happens when you do not honor the internal shift. When you keep showing up the way that people expect you to, the way you have been, when even though you've changed on the inside. Now, at first, it feels harmless, okay? You're just continuing as you were. Sorry. You're just continuing as you were, okay? You laugh at the same jokes, nothing dramatic, no harm in that. You're not along to the same old conversations that you usually have with your friends and family, and you tell yourself, whatever, I'm just being chill. It's not a big deal. These feelings are gonna fade soon. Yeah, but over time, it chips away at you, okay? Every time that you shrink, you are sending a signal to yourself. You are telling yourself, my truth isn't welcome here. Every time that you fake that laugh, every time that you swallow the opinion, every time that you play along with the old version of you, just to keep the vibes right, just to keep the peace, just so that, no one becomes worried. You're building a life around who you used to be, not who you are becoming. And that in itself, that's dangerous because if you keep doing that long enough, you're going to wake up one day in a life that feels nothing like you. You're going to be standing in the mirror looking at a person that you do not even recognize, as if you're living in a third person dimension watching yourself. A life that technically works within society among everyone, but quietly is killing your joy. That's the cost of that's the cost of hiding. You lose your energy, you lose your voice, and you lose your momentum. And eventually you start to feel like a ghost in your own life. Like you're not even there, you're just floating around watching things happen. Not because, anything huge is wrong, no, but because nothing is fully true. The truth is, most people don't need more motivation. They just need permission to stop pretending. Not permission from me or anyone or anything. No, permission from themselves, from yourself. Permission to stop shrinking just to make everyone else, feel comfortable. And I'm telling you right now, okay, I'm telling you right now, you are allowed to change. You are allowed to outgrow the space. You are allowed to want deeper conversation, better alignment, and more honesty in your life, even if it makes people uncomfortable, even if it means things start to shift. That's not selfish, that's called self respect, bare minimum. So, what do you do when you realize that you have outgrown the performance? You need to start showing up as you. And I don't mean in some dramatic, like, burn it all to the ground kind of way, no. Not in a loud, rebellious scream for attention. I mean in a quiet, unapologetic clarity. It looks like choosing not to fake a laugh at a silly joke that's not even funny. It looks like pausing before you automatically say yes to something. It looks like saying, I don't really agree, even when it makes the room go quiet. I'm like, weird. Didn't you usually agree to this? What are you talking about? At first, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. Everyone is repulsive of this you, and you're not used to being repulsed by. Especially if you've built an identity about being agreeable, being likable, being the low maintenance friend, the low maintenance sibling, relative, whatever. But the more that you do it, fear not, the more that you do it, the more natural it starts to feel. And you will attract people who are more in tuned into this version of you. Okay? Because you are not performing anymore. Okay? You're aligning yourself. You are choosing integrity over other people's approval, wholeness over harmony, and the truth over conveniency. And throughout this, you start to notice the shift, okay? The shift in your environment, okay? You leave conversations feeling energized instead of drained. You stop second guessing what you said or how you came across to others. You start to feel more clearer and cleaner. Not because you got louder, but because you stopped hiding behind this persona that's old. That was your old self. Here's what I've learned, okay? You don't have to reinvent yourself overnight. You really don't. You don't need to find your voice in a big, perfect breakthrough. You just need to stop lying about who you are in small moments. Because that's where it really begins. Start small. Start awkward, you know? Start uncertain. But most of all, most importantly, start honest. Because the moment that you choose honesty over image, everything in your life starts to rearrange itself around who you really are, around who you've become. And that's when the real magic happens. That's when things get real. That's when things get excited. That's when the right people, the right opportunities, and the right energy finally start to find its way to you. Let's talk about, let's move on to talking about belonging. Okay, let's talk about it. Belonging. Real belonging isn't about being accepted everywhere that you go. No, it's not about having a bunch of people who like you, having a fan base, a following, being popular. No, that's not it. That's not it. It's about having the right people who recognize you, even when you change. Even when there's a shift within you, they still recognize you. Belonging belonging is like being in a room where you do not have to perform, where you don't have to shrink, where your silence is understood and your truth doesn't need to be a disclaimer. And here's the thing most people don't realize about this. You don't find that kind of belonging by staying the same. You find it by being brave enough to show up as you are, show up as you, real and raw and honest, even when it's messy, even when it's different, even when nobody, you know, no one really agrees with it. You will. like, to be honest, you will lose people, it's inevitable, but that's how life is. You lose some and you gain some. You will outgrow some circles. Some people won't come with you, and that's okay. That's 100% okay. Because the version of you that's trying to grow, is trying to be better, is trying to level up, deserves a space where they are not constantly being kept in check, where they are not constantly shrinking just to be loved. It's that's what you're building now, okay? You're not just growing, you are realigning yourself, okay? You're creating a space in your life that reflects who you're becoming and not who you used to be. And that kind of space, that is where real belonging really lives. It's not in the approval of others, the likes on your post, the views on your video. No, it's not in familiarity. No, it's it's in freedom, okay? It's really in freedom. Listen, you are not broken. You aren't broken. Let that set in. If you have been feeling out of place lately, even around people that you've known forever, don't panic. Don't. Take a deep breath. You're not broken either. You're not cold. You've not become detached. No, you're not being too much. You're just not shrinking anymore. Whatever you're feeling is the tension of becoming someone who doesn't pretend anymore, becoming someone who listens to their gut, becoming someone who is willing to feel awkward for the sake of being real. And that is not a phase, that is a transformation. And yeah, it may get lonely sometimes, but it's the kind of lonely that leads somewhere real. It leads you to something real. Because the more honest you become, the more your life start feeling like yours. And in those moments, you start attracting people who meet you at your current depth, not your past performance or who you were. You start making decisions that fit you and not just make sense. You stop neglecting your identity for comfort, and eventually, slowly and surely, you start to realize you never really needed to fit in. Never. You didn't need to. You just needed to stop abandoning, betraying, and lying and hiding yourself and hurting yourself. So, wherever you are on that path, keep going. Don't give up. You're not behind, you're just building. And if you need someone to walk with you, I want you to know that you're not alone here. This space This space is for people like you, people becoming. Now, if this spoke something, anything into you, don't forget to subscribe because I am building this channel for people like us, people who are ambitious, people who are quietly evolving, people who are done pretending. So if you're ready to grow out loudly, you're in the right place.